Hey, welcome to Genre Exposure, a film podcast. Join us as we explore the wide world of cinema, broadening our horizons one movie at a time. I'm one of your hosts, Dustin, and as usual, I am here with Jason.
Hey, what's going on?
What's up, my dude?
Chilling, getting ready to pod. That's always fun.
Excited. We're on the second part of our sojourn, the Genre Exposure Summer of Love. And when you know it, we've conveniently reached episode 69. It's almost like I planned this or something.
Nice.
So we're continuing our exploration.
We're weird children.
Yes, we are. This is... I gotcha. Here we go, episode 69. We're talking about pink films, specifically Nikkatsu's big-budget stab at them, their infamous, legendary Roman Porno series, continuing our exploration of those and all that they entail. And we didn't have a cool guest to bring on to talk about these with us, because...
Nobody wants to.
Surprisingly, no one wanted to or was available. So we picked one of just the most iconic in the whole series across the board. Flower and Snake, directed by Masaru Konuma from 1974.
Yes.
Which was the start of their S&M series. So lots more on that to dig in and how it kind of impacted Nikkatsu over the years.
I don't know why someone didn't want to come here in our basement and talk to us about this stuff.
There's definitely not a bunch of rope over to the side there.
I got some stuff rigged up in the ceiling.
But first, before we descend into the depravity of this film, we're going to do all the usual stuff. We're going to talk about what we've been watching. And I got some up top, shouty-outy, talk about things. I'll hit you with a good and a bad. Or a positive and a negative, let's say that. I wanted to share that the JFF Plus Independent Cinema is going on right now. That's an online film festival. It's totally free. You just have to register an account on their website, and they just use that to track who's watching stuff and all of that. It's available anywhere in the world outside of Japan, and it's basically just a film festival of indie Japanese cinema.
That's fun.
Very easy to log on to, very easy to navigate. You can just search JFF Plus Independent Cinema. I'll put the link in the show notes. It started August 1st, and it's running until October 31st.
Oh, that's a long time.
Good long time. I think when it hits that 31st date, it will just kind of all shut down. So even if you were in the middle of something, you want to finish it before then. I scrolled through there. There's a lot of dramas, but I did see some interesting things. And a lot of it is more indie, right? So you're not going to see any super big names that you recognize.
Right.
But it's awesome that they do this. It's awesome that they make it free and it's very accessible.
I'm assuming it's subtitled?
Yeah, everything's subtitled. So it's just an opportunity to get at some cool Japanese cinema. If you listen to the show regularly, I'm always being I watched blah, 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 weird Japanese movie. And then you go, how did you watch it, Dustin? And I'm like, there's no real way to watch it. So, bless these people. They're actually trying to get out there and get this stuff out there so that other people around the world can get at it and appreciate it. So go look into that. Go show them some love. Yeah.
Nice.
Our other bit of news, a little more personally relevant to the podcast, I guess. There is a new film in the Muckverse.
Yes.
Jason's giving me this deadpan stare.
It's called Fog City,
It's called Fog City, yeah. It's kickstarting now, and it's got a really short runtime. It's only got, I think it launched with 9 or 10 days for the whole project.
Yeah.
So...
That speaks of confidence.
So I think if everything goes to plan, and once this episode airs, there'll be a day or two left of the Kickstarter. I'll link it in the show notes, and you can go check it out.
Right. Well, they're halfway there, right?
Yeah, they're about halfway to their goal. So this is kind of like Kill Her Goat situation, where the film's already done, totally finished, wrapped, in the can, finalized, 100%. The Kickstarter is just to make a physical media release. They're doing a very fancy run of laser-etched, numbered steelbooks. It looks cool if you like steelbooks.
Sure.
I'm not really big on those.
I'm not huge on them either.
Comes with a 4K disc, comes with a Blu-ray disc, comes with a digital download code for the film.
What about a VHS copy?
They didn't do that this time, I guess. And it's all the things you come to know and maybe appreciate about the Muckverse. It's all practical effects, no CGI at all.
I do applaud that.
All that good stuff. I noticed scrolling through there were no porn stars in the cast list this time.
That's a check in the minus column for me.
It was actual actors and actresses with credits and other film appearances.
Hey, don't say that some performers in the adult industry aren't actors, because some of them are very, very good actors, sir.
I go back to Kill Her Goats, and just
I didn't say
wow.
all of them. I said some of them.
So yeah, it is what it is. I know we rag on this director a lot, Steve Walsh, but
He's making movies, man.
Some of that's punched up, and it's cool that he does keep making movies. Yep. And
he's got a vision.
I admire his spirit. I'm gonna say something nice for him. I admire his spirit and his passion for this. That it's always he wants to push that no CGI. There's always that care about we have to have a physical media release.
I respect that. I respect the hell out of that.
He's clearly a horror fan trying to appeal to horror fans. Mm-hmm. So somewhere in the back of my mind, beneath all the pushed up jokes that I've made on the show, I want him to succeed a little bit.
Well, sure. We always want a good movie. I never root for a bad movie.
So will Fox City be that? Will it plateau beyond the world of Kill Her Goats? I don't know. We'll see. Premise sounded a little like The Crazies and Cabin Fever. Kind of is there's a fog outbreak.
Or The Fog.
Some weird fog gets released in the city and it makes people go crazy or infects them or something.
Yeah. It looks to be a bit more psychological than his earlier films.
Perhaps. We still have the ass cam in the trailer. So.
Well, you gotta have that. You're not getting rid of that.
And that too. That's also a throwback to the whole classical style of horror films. So.
But Kane Hodder is not in this one.
Kane Hodder appearance, no. So yeah, you be the judge if you want to support that or not, and you know that at least I will let you know what it's like once it comes out.
Yep. Always truthful. Always give it to you straight.
I already committed to continuing my sojourn in the Muckverse, so we'll see what happens.
Dustin is a dyed-in-the-wool muckhead.
Yep. Ooh, muckhead. Mm-hmm. I wonder if that's...
I've coined that. I don't know. Base. I hope no one else is taking that, but I'm claiming credit for it right here, right now.
You should reach out.
You should start a fan club.
Yeah, the founding member doesn't really care for them, but...
It comes from a place of love, I assure you.
Okay, well, what have you been watching?
Okay, well, I hung out with our absent pod co-host, Michael.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, I know you were working because you're such a devoted worker.
Yeah.
We watched the DVD I picked up for him, The History of Metal and Horror.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I remember you guys talking about this.
Yeah, it's directed by Mike Schiff. It was not what I thought it was going to be. It wasn't bad, but it was a little kind of typical. I thought it was going to be more of an exploration of the horror films that have used metal in them.
Okay, sure.
Things like Trick or Treat, Hard Rock Zombies, that kind of thing, Black Roses. And it just barely mentioned those. It was more about the shared aesthetics between heavy metal and horror.
So the fact that Gwar puts on costumes.
Right, and Alice Cooper has his spooky stage show and all that stuff, right?
I mean, that's coal too.
It was, yeah, I mean, there were some cool interviews. Had Alice, had Gwar, Rob Zombie, the people you would expect. But, yeah, I really want to see something that is just about those movies that were made largely in the 80s. Rock and Roll Nightmare, the ones that were about heavy metal in a horror film. I don't know, maybe someone can do that. Cool.
Well, maybe one day.
Maybe we should do it.
I don't know if I'm the right one for that, but you and Michael for sure. I'll cheer you on for sure.
You could be my grip or something.
What's the one? Is it Best Boy? I want to be that.
Yeah, you can be the best boy. Absolutely.
Did you watch anything else, or is that all you got kicking around?
Honestly, I have been so bad watching movies lately because things have just been kind of nuts.
Okay.
So that's really the only movie I have to talk about, sadly.
You're saying that you have a show you really want to talk about, though.
Well, I did watch Ahsoka.
Oh, okay.
The first couple episodes.
Well, don't talk about it.
Well, I am a Star Wars fan. I know that you have fallen from the light yourself. I don't like everything Star Wars, of course. Ahsoka is good. I'm not going to say great so far. It's only 2 episodes in. I think they need to get away from using the cartoons and all the lore and stuff and start doing something a bit more independent.
Well, hey, don't worry. I saw that they shut down that studio, so they're not going to make any more cartoons.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The animation department that did the Clone Wars.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Saw a little news piece about that.
And Rebels and all that?
Yeah.
And Bad Batch and stuff?
Pretty sure.
Huh. Okay. I'll have to look that up. Anyway, because I think I don't see people who aren't familiar with like Rebels and Clone Wars and stuff.
A lot of investment to get to the plot.
Because it's like me in the Marvel Cinematic Universe now. I just don't care because I don't want to keep up with it, you know. So I think they really need to do something different and something isolated, standalone. Otherwise, I think they're just going to start losing more viewers. But if you are familiar with all those things, I think there's a lot to like in Ahsoka. Ray Stevenson is awesome. He's the actor that recently passed away.
Yeah.
He plays a dark side user named Balin.
I like his look in the trailer.
He looks cool, and he's very charismatic. Like, we don't know much about him, but I kind of want a show about him.
Sure could use a good villain like that in the movies instead of, Snoke or whoever else.
Don't say Kylo Ren. I like Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren's like the only redeemable part of all that, but
Hux was good until they ruined him in the last one.
Well, there you go.
All right. So anyway,
okay,
that's my Star Wars news.
Neat. So yeah, Ahsoka, if you dig Star Wars, you'll dig it.
Yeah, you'll like it. Yeah, it won't blow you away. So again, only 2 episodes in, but
if you haven't, go back and watch all.
Go watch all of Rebels, all of Clone Wars,
all of Clone Wars,
Mandalorian, Boba Fett.
That continuity.
What have you been watching, man?
Okay, well, I followed up on something from an earlier episode. I went to check out Mortal Kombat Legends Battle of the Realms from 2021. This is the second direct-to-video animated feature for Mortal Kombat. Continues where the first one, Scorpion's Revenge, left off. It's kind of adapting game 2 and 3, the plot of that. So that's the arrival of Shao Kahn and his invasion of Earth.
Oh, yeah, Shaka Khan.
Yeah. Badass warlord dude with the big hammer. It's pretty much more the same. I really liked it. It was super enjoyable, especially if you have any background with the games. You get see all the characters, all the iconic like interactions and moves and stuff. It was a little too rushed, I think. It's only like 80 minutes, but it's doing the plot of 2 different games. And then they also threw in some like plot from the later ones because they get into the whole like the concept of like the Elder Gods and Shinnok and trying to like raise him from the dead, which I think was like the 4th game and on when they got into like the 3D Mortal Kombats.
Yeah, that's after I tuned out.
And so that they kind of like smashed that in at the end too to give like a resolution to everything, and it was way too much going on at once. Like it probably should have been 2 movies, but
right. Other
than that, it was super fun, super gory again.
Nice,
very brutal.
Did it have like one of the things I liked about the second game was all the cool like outworld settings?
Yeah.
Did they use a lot of that?
They did.
Cool.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Even like a lot of the fights, like when they end up actually in like a 1v1 fight, it'll be one of the maps from the arcade game.
Neat.
Kind of like reimagined and animated.
Yeah, those floating dudes in the robes behind them and everything. That's cool.
Yeah, so pretty fun. I think there's like one more that kind of adapts some of the later game plot, and I think they're working on a prequel about Johnny Cage set during the 80s. I think it's kind of supposed to be when he like jumped from being just actor to being like actual martial artist.
Interesting.
Cool that they're continuing them. But that's whatever. There's another film that I really want to talk about. I saw over the weekend
Barbie.
Talk to Me.
Oh.
Woo!
I didn't know you went to go see that.
I was keeping it a secret.
Oh my gosh. What do you think?
So
no spoilers, of course.
What I want to say about this film, spoiler free, is that it is one of the best horror films of this year.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I swear by it. I'm dying on that hill. Fucking amazing. And it's weird because if you put it to paper, like I'm literally like, I'm not going to spoil, but I'm going to tell you the plot right now. Like this is the plot. It's some teens. They get a thing that lets them interact with the spirits and ghosts.
Yep.
They fuck around with it. Someone gets possessed. They're going to die unless they can save them and fix it somehow. Boom, that's the plot. That's the whole plot. It's the most conventional. You already know it. You've seen it. You've done it.
It sounds like every other horror movie these days.
However, the execution is so good. The characters, the way they build them up. I think the production company that was in on this was also the one connected to the Babadook,
okay.
I want to say. And it had a lot of those same vibes. Like there's a heavy like grief storyline that kind of pulls through on everything. The littlest bit I'll set up is this. So the main character, Mia, which Sophie Wilde plays her. She's amazing in this. She's stricken with grief because her mom died. She committed suicide seemingly, but she doesn't want to accept it, and she thinks there has to have been like something between her father, who she's kind of estranged from, and her mom, and it was like that he's responsible, or he let it happen, or she like is obsessed and like fixated on that. And that kind of informs a ton of the movie, because as they get into this whole like, oh, you can use this weird relic to like speak with the dead, she starts to want to be like, well, can I speak to my mom? Can I find out what happened? And it goes into that whole realm of like, any film that has like a Ouija board or any kind of concept like that, like when you get something, how do you know that's what you're actually talking to? Is that the person?
Right.
Is it someone pretending to be them?
Right.
Is it even them anymore? Is it something else now? And yeah, man, like there's a lot of brutal moments, especially when people start getting possessed. Dude fucking like rips his eye out at one point. Really gory, really intense, really good like somber mood. It's the total like perfect A24 kind of film where it's got that like little artsy vibe, but a lot of it's just like it's focusing on the drama and the emotions and the characters.
Would you say it's elevated horror?
People will go online and say it's elevated horror and that it wasn't scary at all and they don't see what the big deal is.
Sure.
Oh, but it's a big deal. These guys are going to be big. Was it Michael and Danny Filippo?
Okay.
Yeah. And I saw that they apparently had already shot a prequel for this, kind of like found footage-y style. I don't know when that's going to get out there, but they do kind of the It Follows motif where it's like someone had the hand before, and you get a little of that in the intro.
Mm.
And so at one point they're trying to backtrack, like, where did this come from? What's the story about it? What's the legend? Why does it work the way that it does?
You gotta do some research.
Yeah, and in the course of that, they learned the story of that guy, and I guess they like shot incidental extra stuff to kind of make that story its own thing. And they've already been slated to make a sequel for it, so...
Oh, wow.
Blowing up big.
So we're putting like a T West with his X universe thing, where he's secretly filming sequels. And
yeah, apparently, which is awesome. And I second it was done, I was like, I want more of this. I want more of these creators doing things.
Cool.
So I'm down for it.
Well, I see it's still playing in our local theater. Should I catch it in the theater?
You should. I think it's worth it. It was so good. Tiffany went with me. She fucking loved it as well. And then the actual like the hand, the relic that they use. It's so fucking cool and so iconic. Of like, there will be like shirts and replicas of that, and it's going to be everywhere. I think once people get to see it, because it's like, I won't give you the whole history, but it's like supposed to be the hand of a medium that could apparently like channel spirits and stuff. And at some point, someone like chopped it off, and then they like plastered it and turned it into this like relic, and the hand still works even though the medium's dead now.
Interesting. Okay. Cool.
So super compelling, super amazing.
I've been meaning to go see it, so I guess I'll just maybe break.
I'm coming out swinging for it.
Wow. I also want to go see The Last Voyage of the Demeter.
You know, I'm curious about that one, but I'm also skeptical just because, and I know I'm not even the first person to say this, but it's like, how can you turn that one part of Dracula into a movie? But
well, I mean, it is a part of the. It's one thing we didn't see in the book. You know, we don't know exactly what happened, so it's ripe for
But I saw Stephen King drop some praise for it, so maybe.
Well, I like the director a lot, and it's got Liam Cunningham in it. He's great. And love me some Dracula.
I'll tell you, if you got to pick one, I'm gonna go out for Talk to Me.
Maybe I'll do a double feature. Who knows? Make up for all that lack of movie watching I've been doing.
Getting ballsy, okay? Yeah.
Do it. Do it. I'll do it.
Do it. Alright, so today we resume our legendary run through the world of Nikkatsu Roman Porno. Talking today about 1974's Flower and Snake, directed by Masaru Konuma.
Indeed.
And there's a lot of places we could start. This is an interesting film, especially taking it and then comparing it back to our first episode with Zoom Up Rape Site. And I guess I'll drop this now. We didn't drop it at the top, but it should be self-evident if you listened to the last episode. This is an erotic film. This is a film with a lot of S&M content. A lot of shocking and perhaps arresting visuals that you'll be put through.
Yeah, and this one is more graphic than the previous one. Despite the previous one's title.
Yeah, surprisingly. So yeah, know your limits, know what you're cool with. If you don't think this is a film you want to check out or even hear about or learn about, we understand and we respect you. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you have been warned.
Yeah, stay tuned.
So I thought, where do we start with this? Because we kind of need to lay down some concepts, right?
Sure.
So, I guess let's top level. I'm going to hit you with the synopsis. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about the genre, and then maybe we'll go off on a little side path.
Okay.
So here's our synopsis. The elderly Senzo Toyama orders his employee, Makoto Katagiri, to kidnap and train his wife, Shizuko, in order to break her pride so that she will submit to his carnal desires.
Sounds like your typical, what we've come to know as pink films from Japan, right?
Sounds pretty spot on.
Yeah.
So what genre is this, besides being an erotic film?
Well, it lacks the thriller horror vibe that we got with Zoom Up. This one's almost pure erotica, I think. I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of drama in there, and almost a dark comedy too.
I was gonna ask if we should put comedy in there or not.
Yeah,
so I never knew some of the parts that are funny. I didn't know if they were meant to be funny.
I think it's hard to take a lot of this seriously. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think it's winking a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So officially, if you go on IMDb, it says it's a drama/thriller. I don't know about the thriller
aspect. No,
that's like tenuous to me. I think
if they concentrated more on Makoto's issues, especially his past, that's more thriller-esque. But that's barely touched upon, really. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we'll get to that.
Okay. So before we go in, this is like an quote-unquote S&M focused thing. So I feel like with all the rope tying that ensues, we kind of need to define that a little bit, right? Because depending on your level of Japanese-related media and cultural knowledge, you might come to watch this and you'll be like, what the fuck is all of this? Why are there these weird rope patterns tied around everybody?
Because it's Japan, all right? That's all I need to know.
So to rapidly run through this a little bit, we need to talk about kinbaku. So kinbaku means tight binding, which is the general term for this kind of bondage.
I love how the Japanese have a term for everything.
And then I'll lay down some more terms for you. Kinbaku-bi means the beauty of tight binding. So that's sort of the aesthetic of why this could be visually appealing to some people. So broadly, it's a Japanese style of bondage or BDSM, which involves tying a person up using simple yet visually intricate patterns. Usually that's done through using several pieces of rope. In Japan, this is usually a natural fiber rope, and it's referred to as asanawa.
Okay.
The illusion is the use of the rope to restrain prisoners as a symbol of power, in the same way that stocks or manacles would be used in a more Western BDSM concept.
Okay, gotcha.
Do we need to define BDSM?
I don't think we do in this day and age.
If you're listening to this podcast, you probably know.
Well, if you're listening to this podcast, you're torturing yourself, so you know all about BDSM.
That's literally the act of listening to us. So, another term I want to lay down, so the word shibari. You'll see that a lot, too, if you look into these kind of concepts. That's basically a term that's gotten into common use from Western people interested in this. Really got very common in the 1990s, and it's just a term that's used to refer to the bondage art of this style. In Japanese, shibari broadly means binding or tying. That's like the act of actively tying the person.
Okay.
By comparison. Let's see. So, shibari and kinbaku focus on the aesthetics and display of the body. As a result, and due to the manipulation of body parts using rope to achieve this, it is common, though not always required, for models or participants to be fully naked, and the art form regularly incorporates aspects of BDSM, such as erotic humiliation. It may be used for restraint, as well as solely being just a visual to look at. A little history.
Mm-hmm.
Bondage as a sexual activity first came to notice in Japan in the late Edo period. That would be like the 1600s to like the early 1800s. The father of Kimbaku is considered to be Seiyu Ito. He started studying and researching Hojojutsu, The Art of Binding a Prisoner in War, and is credited of taking those concepts and then developing that into what became Kinbaku. And he had noted in writings that he drew inspiration from other art forms of the time, including kabuki theater and the ukiyo-e woodblock prints, which of course are very iconic.
Right.
And I'll maybe throw one of those in the show notes if no one's ever seen them because they're beautiful.
Right.
Kimbaku became widely popular in Japan in the 1950s through specialist magazines such as Kitan Club or Yomakiri Romance. These were some of the first publications to actually publish naked bondage photographs in print. In the 1960s, people such as Ikichi Osada began to appear and perform live S&M shows, and these shows involved usually a large amount of rope bondage. In the modern sense, these performers are referred to as nawashi, which means rope master, or bakushi, which is pulled from the term kinbakushi, which means bondage master.
Nice.
Jason's just nodding.
That's just,
and
yeah,
grinning.
okay, yeah, all right, keep going.
Let's see. I pulled a bunch of stuff about the rope. I don't think we need to go that deep.
I don't think
Talk
so
about
either. I mean, if people are interested in this sort of thing, I'm sure there's resources out there for them.
I'll throw you some links to get you going. Okay, I want to talk about this. So the aesthetics of the bound person's position is very important. In particular, Japanese bondage is distinguished by its use of specific forms and aesthetic rules to the placement of a person's body. Sometimes asymmetric and often intentionally uncomfortable positions are employed. In particular, this Japanese style of bondage is very much about the way the rope is applied, and the pleasure is more in the journey than the destination. In this way, the rope becomes an extension of the rope master's hands and is acting as a form of communication between both individuals.
Okay.
Kimbaku is based on very specific rope patterns, and many of them were derived from this hojojutsu that I referenced a second ago. But the main thing that Ito did was to modify these to make them actually safe and not threatening to an individual to be subjected to.
That's thoughtful.
Because again, it was an art of like restraining prisoners of war. So originally they were deliberately designed to cause harm and be as uncomfortable as possible.
Right.
And he sort of stepped that into a place where you can't have this erotic element to it, and you're not just like outright torturing a person. And there's several iconic ties and like terms for those. I don't think we'll get into that. You see a lot of them in this film,
okay.
So we can run with that. And that's all I wanted to say about Kinbaku, I think.
Okay.
I think we're good on that.
All right. And is it true that this is one of the first films that really kind of featured that brought it to the mainstream, more or less?
I guess I should lay down this part of the background, too. So this is based on a novel by Oniroku Dan. He was born in 1931, and he's considered Japan's best author of S&M fiction. And I think I want to lay this down now because there were things in the film when I watched it that I was confused about or like that didn't really make sense to me. Mm-hmm. And once I did some research, this whole context of the author and like where he was coming from, it changed my perception a little bit.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So the director of this film, Masaru Konuma, talking about Dan and sort of his writings, he says that the author described three purposes of S&M. It's for punishment, for confinement, and for a sense of shame. And he also went on to add that the author dislikes S&M as punishment. To me, his novels and screenplays are centered around the humiliation concept as being the forefront. And in other interviews, he's confirmed this, stating, my book editors often confuse S&M with cruelty, and they try to get me to write something that's a punishment tale for them. However, this type of story is actually out of my realm. Those types of stories actually give me the creeps. Rather, my concept of S&M is a distorted sexual desire or a sense of extreme disorientation. I would call it a male fantasy derived from love, from seeing a beauty suffer through a sense of shame. Therefore, I would say that my style contains a romantic aesthetic and sometimes a decadent fragrance without a direct focus on torture.
Okay. Delicately put.
Delicately put, yes. Then Konuma, speaking of the sort of like protagonists and female characters in these novels, he said that I think in his novels he's searching for the beauty of women. He creates an ideal woman and then proceeds to sell an S&M fantasy to his readers. And the interesting thing I think about this film is that Oniroku Dan and Naomi Tani were already kind of linked up together. So Naomi Tani plays our main heroine in this film, Shizuko, and she is one of like the queens of Roman porno. She's been in a ton of films, one of the very most iconic. And she was already linked up with Dan and kind of like interacting with him and working on some like indie actual pink films with him. There was even a pink film adaptation of this story beforehand. And so it was kind of became a thing of like when Nikkatsu was looking to bring people in, they really wanted to like get them on board and involved in some kind of project. But so they had a very close relationship, and Naomi Tani said in an interview that his idea of a perfect film actress to portray one of his characters is that she must look good in a kimono, she needs to have long jet black hair, and she has to have a certain amount of body fat against the trend of what would be the typical like attractive, thin, movie star ideal. And the reason for that is that so when the bondage rope ties are made, it leaves a clear impression on her skin and creates a certain different visual aesthetic than if they were just like very thin and fit.
Right.
And she has to be able to look graceful under torture and have strong, vibrant facial expressions.
And this was kind of Tani's specialty, right?
Yes. Down even said that Tani was the perfect ideal of that vision he had. She fit like every criteria in his mind that would be the perfect model. And he even used her as a model for several of the characters in different novels that he wrote.
Okay. So I think it's important to note that the actress featured in this movie, she was cool with all this.
Yes.
She was...
Yep. She was cool with this. She was into this.
If not into it, then certainly, it was part of her art form.
I didn't pull the quote I meant to, but there was a quote somewhere where she admired the artistic...
Okay.
Again, that aesthetic of how it looks once you're tied up and kind of positioned and formed and stuff.
Yeah. I think that's important to note, because with movies like this, I think a lot of people have that idea that women are being forced into this sort of thing. And yes, sometimes they are, sadly.
Yeah.
But also a lot of times, no.
Yeah.
Nope. No, they're not.
And so she actually retired kind of suddenly at the height of her career in 1979. And there's a quote from Dan about this where he said, "The moment I heard the announcement, I went into shock. To me, it was the end of the golden duo that had formed from us working together. In truth, I almost decided to quit writing at the time."
Wow. I wonder why she quit.
I couldn't dig up any information about that, so I don't know. And then just to carry us along, so this was conceived to be the first S&M focused Roman porno. And then that was joined later in the year from the same director with mostly the same cast, the film Wife to be Sacrificed, which is another work based on one of his novels. And those two films are kind of credited with saving Nikkatsu from financial collapse. Because even though these were popping off, it wasn't until these two that it went into overdrive.
Okay.
And just really exploded. And so to recontextualize that a little bit, so again, we had coming into the 70s, Nikkatsu was doing bad. They were facing bankruptcy. They decided, hey, we're going to mirror these pink films, do our own version of them. That seems to make a lot of money, which it worked. But by 1974, they were still having a tough year. They had no big hits, and they were struggling to kind of get that wow factor to really win at the box office. And so since the late 1960s, Tani was already considered a queen of pink. She had appeared in a ton of different low-budget independent pink films, and she was one of those actresses that if you were into these, you were always talking about her. She was iconic. Since they started the Roman porno series, Nikkatsu had been trying to recruit her into a film, but she had always refused because the studio was reluctant to try the S&M genre in a film. But Tani said, "This is my specialty.
Yeah.
If I'm doing one, it has to be an S&M film."
It's her brand.
Yep. And so I guess finally they kind of came to the table and they're like, make your demands. We want to make this happen. And she said, it has to be S&M film. I want it to be based on one of Dan's novels. And she even suggested Flower and Snake. Which again, they had already done a film version of this some years earlier as an indie pink film. I think the indie one is called Flower and Snake Rearing the Flesh. and that was released by Yamabe Pro, and I could find no other info about it. So
Okay.
I don't even know if there's like a version out there we could get access to watch. But so Nikkatsu took that, they thought about it, and in the end they agreed to it, but they knew that they had to also convince the author to get on board with this plan. And so they had a bunch of back and forth negotiations and talking about it. And there was a lot of disagreements because they were wanting to like tone down things from the novel for the film. And then Dan is like, no, we got to do it, exact, book to screen. And as they kind of worked it out eventually, finally he invited the director, Konuma, and the scriptwriter, Yozo Tanaka, over to his house. He said, we need to meet in person and talk about this. And so they're over in the evening, and in the middle of this meeting, suddenly the power goes out in the house. And they're kind of freaking out. They don't really know what's going on. And then Don's like, no, it's okay. It's no problem. And he calls for someone to like come in and bring a light. And then in walks Naomi Tani in a kimono, and she has a lantern and lights it. And that was like a trick they had set up to be like, hey, we're going to take the deal, do the film.
Oh, nice. Very theatrical.
Between the two of them, the director and the scriptwriter, they agreed that the novel as it was unfilmable, and that regardless of his desires, they had to make changes to the story.
Unfilmable, like Naked Lunch unfilmable? Or
I don't know. I don't think there's an English translation of the novel that I could find, so I was really curious about like what is the plot of the novel, but maybe if you are an intrepid individual that knows these things, you can share it with us.
Yes, please do.
We will amend this episode. But so, of course, Dan and Naomi Tani objected to this. There was a lot of friction during the whole production back and forth about like plot concepts and ideas. And then of this, Konuma said, while we worked on the final script, Tani was very argumentative. However, I was very impressed with her change in attitude when we reached a finalized script. During the shoot, she never gave us a single problem. Instead, she was completely committed to the role. I absolutely admire her professionalism.
Nice.
So after the film came out, it was a huge success. It was everything that Nikkatsu needed. It got them back in the game. And of course, they knew we had to have a sequel, right? Got to have more. Got to churn out more. Got to have more. Dan was bitter from the whole process. He didn't like the back and forth on the plot. He didn't like how much they had changed his novel in the end. And so he bowed out from working with them any further.
That's too bad.
Tani stayed in. She became a huge film star for them. Ultimately, he did reconcile with the director and a lot of the crew, and they kind of kept a friendly relationship, but he was never in the mix anymore. That's that.
A shame.
I think that's all the background we need.
Okay.
Yep. I think we can dive into the story now.
Get into it.
So, we open with our lead, ostensibly, right? Makoto Katagiri.
It's a scene bathed in red.
Yes. Vibrant reds. And Katagiri is played by Yasunori Ishizu.
And yeah, in this scene, he is a little boy, and he sees it's his mother having sex with a man.
Yep.
And I have in my notes, black man, does this matter? Question mark.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, he has such a violent reaction. But I mean, this is a little kid, and he, maybe doesn't understand what's going on. He thinks his mom is being hurt.
Well, let me give you some more context too. He's also an American soldier.
Yes, he's a GI.
It's implied this is during the occupation.
Sure.
After World War II.
Yeah. So the kid grabs his M1911 and shoots him with it.
Fucking kills him.
Yeah, but the guy, I mean, he's a tough fucker. He takes it right in the chest, but he gets up and he's like choking him. And then the camera pans away and you hear another gunshot. And Makoto's screaming out for his mom while he's being choked and all that good stuff.
And where is he today after this traumatic experience? Well, he is you say he's like in his 30s probably?
Yeah,
I think.
He actually says he's 30.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, he says a 30-year-old loser lives with his mom.
Wow.
His mom is...
But not in the basement. There's other things going on in the basement.
He has to be in the attic because the basement is needed because his mother, Mio, played by Hiroko Fuji, operates a pornography company of a sorts.
Sure does.
Where they do kinbaku and film it and take pictures and...
Yeah, I love the reveal here because Makoto gets up from his dream and he's like, oh, that nightmare again. And he's like getting a glass of water or something. And he hears some noises coming from the basement. And he goes down and opens the door and you just see all these women trussed up.
Yep.
And like, men taking pictures and stuff. And
it's funny because as he's wandering around, there's like faint moans.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, what?
Right. And then it cuts to him just sitting on the stairs, like having his drink and just watching.
Mm-hmm. And the one model gets scared when she notices him.
Yeah.
And she's like, he keeps staring at me.
Oh, duh.
And then they're just kind of like, hey, Makoto, get out of here. Come on.
Yeah, so the woman who turns out to be his mother, like, shoos him out.
But they also tell the actress, the woman, not to worry because he's impotent.
Right.
As if he doesn't have enough problems already.
But we see him back in his bedroom, and he's looking at pictures of the, binding and all that stuff. And he's clearly masturbating.
So it's something about when it's an actual woman...
He can't do anything.
Yeah, he can't do anything.
It has to be a picture. It has to be something abstract. And there's a funny scene where he throws the used tissue in with like a pile of others in his
huge
closet.
Pile, yeah.
And he says, like, this is your graveyard.
Yeah. I thought that was fucking hilarious. And see, this is one of those parts where I was like, this is technically very sad, but...
Also funny.
It's so funny the way they frame it.
It's very funny. He just keeps them all.
So the other things about him we know is he's a businessman. He works at a local company. But otherwise, it's just work and his sad life at home.
He's having breakfast.
Jacking off.
Yeah. He's having breakfast with his mom, and he's talking about how he's impotent. And she tells him, you can do it if you want to. But he blames his impotence on her.
Right.
And the GI she was having sex with named Jimmy.
Yep. He says killing Jimmy traumatized him.
Yeah.
And so now, like, that's just a block that comes up in his mind.
Right.
If he is even, like, trying to be intimate with a woman.
And we see one of the women in Mio's employ, Teru, I think her name is.
Yes.
She's kind of flirting, like helping him with his tie and stuff, and she's shooing him off. So she's that, overbearing, domineering mother.
Yeah, it seems like she doesn't mind this situation so much because she gets to keep control.
Yeah.
It's very, like, helicopter parent kind of thing.
And then, this is when we see, because we see the outside of their building, and it's like a grocery store, like a small grocery store or something, that obviously also sells pornography.
Little front there for their activities.
And Makoto's at work, and he's told that the boss wants to see him.
Yep. They say Senzo, the boss of the company,
yes,
he has a need of you for some reason. And it's funny because he gets up to go to the office. And his supervisor's like, no, not at the office.
Yeah, he's at home.
He's at home. Go to his house.
There. Yeah. So we cut to some big lavish estate. And there is a girl who's at least partially nude, bent over.
Yep. This is one of the maids at this estate.
Yes, Haru, we find out, right?
Yeah, Haru, played by Hajiri Abe.
And there's this older man...
Which is Senzo.
He is Senzo.
Played by Nagatoshi Sakamoto.
He's the boss. And he's putting caterpillars on her ass.
Yep. And reviling in excitement at the fact that she's like squirming from it.
Yeah.
Which pretty much already tells you everything you need to know about his personality.
Yeah. And he says something about how his wife won't have sex with him, so he punishes the maid.
Yep. He says, you have to bear it because she rejects my desires.
He's like...
But then he ups the ante, though.
He does.
He produces, and this again is like, it shouldn't be comical, but it is, because the way they frame it is like he draws out the little like
enema bottle,
bottle, and like holds it up, and then the camera zooms in on it.
Right, and then he puts it in, and of course, again, this is Japan. They're not showing anything graphic.
Right.
It's all hidden because they don't show genitalia.
Yeah, they're behind like a garden hedge when this is going on.
Yeah, so you're not seeing insertions and things like that.
But there's sound effects.
And then it cuts to the maid's face, making this big surprise.
Yeah.
Look.
I felt very sorry for her because she was really cute. And
yeah, and it's the whole maid thing too. There's a name for that too, I'm sure.
Probably.
Yeah. But there's also a funny line where he's like asking her what's inside her ass. And she says, "I don't know." And he's like, "You're about to find out."
Yeah,
See, it's stuff like that make this funny.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, Sinzo's a real fucker, man. Like
he's a fucker, all
right. And as she kind of runs off, he takes to bothering his wife now.
Yeah, who's taking a bath. She's like in this bathhouse,
and he like pulls open the window and is like scheming on her.
he's like, I guess he's so horny. He's like a zombie almost.
Yeah.
The way he moves, it's like he can't quite walk.
And she immediately is like berating him for it.
Right.
And he's like, "I can't help myself."
Yeah. Right. She wants something to do with it, right? Mm-hmm. She even says like, "You should divorce me," but he won't.
Mm-hmm. He refuses to.
So she runs away. He's chasing her.
It's funny because about the time he gets crawled into the bathroom, she has like exited and already put a kimono back on.
Yes. So Makoto gets there and is greeted by the maid, who takes him up to the garden, and they see Shizuko and his boss
arguing, kind of going back and forth.
And Shizuko has like these gardening shears. And she says she's going to cut her. She's going to kill herself if he doesn't leave her alone. But instead, she cuts off one of the roses.
Yep.
And he's upset about this. He's very protective.
His garden, his lavish garden, that's so perfect.
Yeah. But during all this, she had scraped her breast on a thorn, so there's blood. He says it's the thing he hates most, but it seems to excite him even more. And then she slaps him in the face with the flowers, and it cuts his face, and he freaks out. It's a very amusing performance. See, it's like I don't know if this is parody or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to gauge the feel.
Yeah.
But then the funny thing is, like, this is all going on, and then Makoto's just there. Mm-hmm. And it's like Sinzo forgot he sent for him or something. He's like, "Oh, yeah, you."
Oh, yeah, right. And the next we see him, he's got, like, bandages on his face.
Yeah. But what we learn is that Sinzo was snooping around at the office and found a bunch of bondage photos in Makoto's desk.
Yeah. Shouldn't leave your porn at work, dude.
And he's kind of made, like, a logic jump here that's a little weird, but he assumes that because Makoto has these photos, he is in fact a rope master.
Yes.
And is skilled in all of this.
Yes.
And he decides that he needs those services.
Mm-hmm. He wants him to punish his prideful wife.
Yes, and train her, break her pride, make her give in to all his weird, perverted desires.
Mm-hmm. And he says a little bit about Haru here, too. He says that Shizuku came from a rich family. Mm-hmm. Haru was their maid. She came with them. So they're like very inseparable and close
package
friends.
deal.
Yeah.
And Haru is very forward thinking and very, very modern about everything. Mm. And she's imparted a lot of those terrible progressive ideas onto Shizuko.
Right.
Which is why she's so resistant to Sinzo's weird perversions.
And we see Shizuko arranging flowers with her husband's blood on them too, which is like so Japanese.
I loved that shot too.
Yeah, it's
so
nice.
Cool.
It's cool.
Obviously, at first Makoto disagrees because he's like, "I'm not gonna."
Yeah, he's like, seriously,
take your wife, and that's weird.
He insists. He's like, "I'm your boss. I'm commanding you."
He could fire him if he doesn't do it.
Right. So I was like, fine. And that night, he's practicing tying knots in a blow-up doll.
This is also fucking hilarious.
Yeah. And he starts beating it and stomping on it.
Our guy don't have a clue.
Yeah. And it seems to excite him when he's being violent.
Oh, yeah, he's getting into it.
Yeah. So he says, I'll do it.
And they concoct this whole scheme to abduct her. So
it seems overly elaborate.
Yeah, the next day they're in town, and they're at like
it's like some party. It's like a
little party, a little gathering. And Sinzo secretly drugs her tea with sleeping pills. And it's funny because she passes out, and they're like, "Oh no, something's wrong with her." And then immediately a guy is like, "Oh hey, I'm a doctor."
Yeah, they're like, "No." Like Makoto trips him and everything, and they're trying to usher him out, and he's like, "But I'm a doctor."
Yes, but they decide, "Oh, Makoto, she doesn't feel good. Take her home for me, since you're my subordinate."
Mm-hmm. And his boss says to give her an enema after tying her up and take pictures.
Mm-hmm. He wants to see the pictures.
He says, "This will ensure that she never leaves me."
And we should set up now at this point. I think it's when they have their first discussion, but kind of the only big stipulations that Sinzo sets is that, number one, got to give her back when she's trained. And then number 2, you can't have sex with her.
Yeah, can't have sex with her. Yeah, he tells her that here. He tells him that here.
Yeah.
But on the way back to his house...
When you're a weird perverted old guy and you just gave away your wife to a dude.
Yeah, what do you expect? So Shizuko's in the back seat. She's kind of waking up and, out in and out of consciousness.
Yeah, he stops off in like a little field in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. And Makoto's kind of molesting her and realizes he's getting excited, which doesn't happen with real women.
However, the very knowledge of that triggers that memory.
Yeah.
And suddenly he's back there.
Yeah, he thinks he sees Jimmy outside the car.
And it makes him stop.
Yeah.
So reluctantly, he takes Shizuko home. And she wakes up finding herself tied up. On his bed, right? That's the first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And as she calls out for help, this draws in the mother, Mio.
It was very cool with all this.
Yeah, it's funny because she's like, "Oh, please help me! Your son. I don't know. He's kidnapped me." And then she's like,
Yeah, and
and she basically encourages him. She's like, "Yeah, do whatever you want. Go ahead, rape her.
Yeah,
whatever. Just use her."
She's like, "Oh, she's a rich man's wife. She's prideful. But let's see how prideful she is when she shits herself."
Yeah, because he says he's not going to do anything. He says that, she's so beautiful and so perfect, and I could never do anything like that to her.
But then his mom comes in with this big-ass fucking syringe thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, minus the needle. I mean, huge. I don't know how many milliliters are in this
scene.
thing.
I've been thinking all week how to talk about this scene. So, they give her an enema. And they really build up the moment.
They do. She's like writhing in pain and all this stuff and trying not to do what you would do.
And then I'm just going to get us through this part. So it happens. However, they chose to make the sound effects be like
It's amazing.
the fucking roar of car crashes.
It's amazing. It sounds like the Millennium Falcon when it won't start.
Yeah.
There's all these like grinding gears and mechanical noises. It's great. It's amazing. I don't know if there's some sort of taboo against having those actual sounds or not. Or it's definitely a choice.
It's a choice.
But he also...
I fucking lost it. I was like, I should not laugh at this, but I am dying now.
See, that's the thing. Is this supposed to be funny? It is. I laughed. And Makoto has this plastic bag that he uses to collect everything.
That was... Tiffany reluctantly watched this with me. I'm sorry that I'm revealing this.
She doesn't listen to this. She won't know.
But the whole time, like, in that build-up, she was like, they need to put a bedpan or they're just going to let her shit all over the bed and then just clean the bed or what?
Right. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, do you really want to clean that up?
But again, he doesn't really know what he's doing, so.
Right. But he finds this all very exciting.
Yes. It kind of breaks through that mental block he had, and he finds himself past all his issues in this moment.
He's able to have sex with a woman, albeit by force.
Now, again, we're not going to play-by-play these sex scenes, but
no.
I wanted to talk about this because
we'll talk about the funny ones.
We'll talk about the funny ones, yeah. But so this is 74. Zoom Up Rape Site was 79.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the actual like sex scenes here are like kind of, I don't know, they were kind of like lacking in a way almost.
Well, right, yes.
They were very short, very like, I don't know. I felt like Zoom Up like staged them better.
This movie's very not that interested in
the sex,
actual sex, as much as the bondage and humiliation.
Yeah. That was kind of the vibe I was getting. I was wondering if it was just a me thing or
no. It's definitely the angle this is going in. And there's another hilarious scene where he's outside the shop. And he's burning his big pile of tissues.
Yep.
And there's this little kid watching. He's like on a tricycle, like watching.
He's like, yep, I don't need this anymore.
And the kid says, like, what are you doing? And he says, I'm burning away my past.
That's so overdramatic. So the training commences. He's tying her up and doing different stuff. We get a scene where he reports in to Shinzo and gives him first some photos, but then he gave him the audio recording of the enema.
Yeah, and a box of some of her excretions.
Yeah. And I love the scene of, like, he leaves, And then Shinzo's like, oh, I gotta listen to the tape. And he's just like listening to it with wonder. And then one of his subordinates comes in.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I told you to knock. I did, sir. You didn't hear me. And he also asks Makoto when the training will be done. And he says, oh, it never ends.
Mm-hmm. Which is the first sign that,
yeah,
this little plan's going to shit. However,
going to shit.
At the same time, Makoto's also getting attached to her now.
Oh, yes.
He's finding he has actual emotional feelings for her.
To the woman he is abducted and raped.
However, after that check-in with the boss, he goes back home and finds a bit of treachery's gone down.
Yep.
While he's gone, Mio and her staff decide, let's take Shizuko down there and put her through the ringer.
She's in the basement.
And he conveniently gets home right about the time where they've already tortured her a bunch. And the kind of the lead guy that leads all the torturing of the shop...
The rope master guy.
The rope master, I would assume. He decides he's going to rape Shizuko. But just then, Makoto comes home and kind of breaks it up.
Yep.
And he kind of lays down this law of like, hey, no one can touch her unless I'm present.
Right.
Period.
Right. Then he has sex with her to the sounds of smooth jazz.
Yeah. Which getting that smooth jazz in there, man.
Yeah.
Someone's got to have the jazz.
Yeah, the soundtrack is not as good as Zoom Up.
No, it's very... you don't notice it a lot of the time.
It's traditional.
Yeah.
It's that sort of, just background music.
Not offensive, not out of place, but it's also not really remarkable in any way. And so we start to get a rift between Mio and Makoto.
Yep.
He is actually kind of coming into his own and taking agency of his situation, and he's telling his mom no.
Yep. And he's like giving Shizuko a bath while she's all trussed up. She seems to be enjoying it. So either she's getting into this or she's playing him.
Right. You kind of get that vibe. It could be like a Stockholm syndrome thing almost, but
or she's just trying to bide her time until she.
But interestingly, and I think there's the payoff for this at the end, we don't get a lot of Shizuko's kind of mental state in all of this. They keep that very occluded from you.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, during that bath, isn't that when she asks if Makoto will protect her?
Yeah, she asks him to never leave her, and she loves him.
Yep. She says she wants to spend the rest of her life with him.
And the next morning, he tells his mom he's getting married. And again, he says, I'm getting married. They're at the breakfast table. And then you hear that bridal march sound. His mom gets up, walks over to the radio, turns it off, and the music stops. It was diegetic the whole time. Hilarious.
Yeah, the more we talk through it, I think this has to have the comedy tag.
Yeah, it is.
There's no way it can't.
It's very funny.
Yeah, so in the end of this, though, she says, I'll never allow it. I forbid it. And then he says, I don't care. You're an old hag.
Yep.
So the battle lines are kind of being drawn. And then, is this, isn't this, he goes to check in with Shinzo, right? But then he runs into Haru.
Yeah, he goes, his boss tells him it's time to return my wife.
And he just says no.
And he's like, ah. Yeah, he runs into Haru outside.
And she kind of wants an audience with him to talk about Shizuko.
She wants to know where Shizuko is and wants to see her and all that stuff.
And Haru drops some interesting, more backstory context to everything that's going on with this whole weird, fucked up situation. And we learned that Shizuko actually had a lover that was kind of like her true love, who she was really into.
Yeah.
She wanted to spend the rest of her life with.
Well, I mean, they're having tea together, and at this very tea house is where they used to hook up, Shizuko and her former lover.
Yeah.
And Haru says, okay, I'll take you to see her, but you have to have sex with me. And this, overwhelms Haru, and she, faints. So he starts doing his thing, and wakes up during.
Yeah. But no, I was talking about the context of the guy that Shizuko was into, he...
Oh, well, he wasn't, wealthy and stuff.
Yeah, he wasn't wealthy, so she had to be married off to
I think
Shinzo.
her family wanted him to marry someone who was, rich.
I knew there was some reason that broke up.
Oh, sorry.
Because then that defines kind of the rift, is that she doesn't really even want to be with Shinzo, but she has to.
Yeah. And while Makoto is having sex with Haru, she is crying out Shizuko's name.
We learned that she's got some feelings for Shizuko.
She's obsessed with Shizuko just like everybody else in the movie.
Which rapidly becomes evident. So after that little escapade, he returns home to find that, wouldn't you know it, Mother has been plotting again. Mm-hmm. And it was at this point I was kind of like, dude, why would you even leave her alone?
Yeah.
At this point.
He's getting overly confident.
Yeah.
But he gets back and he hears moans and stuff, and he goes to his room, and there's a red light on, and he sees a guy on top of Shizuko.
Not just a guy.
A black man.
It's Jimmy.
And it's Jimmy. So he grabs a gun that's laying there, but it doesn't fire. And Jimmy, in quotation marks, gets up and comes over and starts like choking him. But his mom comes out and says, "You can stop now." And he asks for his money. She gives it to him.
What's funny is when he steps into the room, it's like the scene, right?
Right.
Dude's naked.
Yeah.
He's going at Shizuko. But then whenever he kind of snaps out of it, the dude's got clothes on. Like
Right.
he's not even naked. It doesn't seem like he even really did anything.
Yeah.
Like they just
being there.
preyed on his mind, basically. But yeah, this breaks Makoto.
Yeah. He's like, "This is punishment for betraying me." Makoto is now impotent again. He tries to have sex with Shizuko and can't. And I have in my notes here that I think maybe he's just having trouble performing in front of his mother, but, maybe not.
Yeah. However, he decides to continue the training. Almost vindictively at this point.
Right.
It's like
right.
he was denied whatever happiness was building between them, and now he's like, whatever, I'm just going to use you, I guess. So this is where it cuts to she wants to go out. She begs him to go
She's
out.
all hogtied, just in his bedroom.
And he finally decides to, but he takes her out on a leash.
Okay. This is also very funny. Because there's like a hard cut to them in the park.
Yeah.
And he's holding a rope, and it's tied around her. And she's basically running around him like a dog.
Yeah.
In the yard. And it's a park. It's a public park. I mean, there are people around. I know in Japan, people pride themselves on minding their own fucking business, but Jesus, So then they're like,
well, they have a little conversation. It's almost like a picnic, but not really.
Yeah, and they're like sitting by this fountain, and she's still tied up and stuff. People are walking around.
But she's accepted it.
She seems to be, and she has to go to the bathroom.
And he's very reluctant. He's like, I don't know. There's no easy way to do it. I just have to untie you.
Yeah, are you going to run away on me, basically?
And then she's like, I won't run away. I'll come right back.
Yep. So we see her in the bathroom, and she's like reading all the graffiti.
It's all pervy shit.
Yeah. And he's kind of waiting, and then he says, he goes to check, and she's not there. And he goes and kind of just like is on the grass, like, shit, she got away.
He's panicking on what I'm going to do.
Yeah, but then she shows up.
Yep. She came back. Which, it's more of a context thing later, but I almost wonder if she was playing with him in that moment. Like she was kind of hiding off to the side.
Yeah.
To see what he would do.
Yeah. She wants to go see a movie.
Yep.
And he says, well, like a porno? She says, sure. But in the scene, it's an interracial couple, and it triggers him.
Yeah. He immediately is like, I don't want to watch this anymore. Let's go.
But it also unleashes a memory hidden deep in his psyche.
Yeah, because he makes some complaints, and then the dude's like, hey, shut up, man.
Yeah, the guy's like, shut the fuck up.
And then,
I'm trying to watch
and then
porno.
she's like, no, just watch a little more. And then as he's watching it, the old gears start to turn up there.
Yep. And he remembers.
Yeah, he remembers the truth.
He didn't kill Jimmy. His mother did.
Yep.
And let him take, all the responsibility for it all these years.
Yeah, she kind of put the blame on him because he's a kid, so what are they going to do?
Yep. So he immediately calls his mother at a public phone booth whilst having sex with Shizuko.
Yeah, because now the middle block is clear. There's no problems.
And this is great because people are walking right past them, and some are looking, some are obviously just look straight ahead.
Yeah, like the one guy kind of pauses and you see him peering in the window a little bit.
I part of me wondered if they filmed that Gonzo style.
I don't know. Surely not, right?
You would think not. It looks convincing. I don't know. But the mother's talking and she faints.
Yeah.
I thought, did she have a heart attack? Is she dead? Jesus.
That would have been quite the escalation.
But apparently they get picked up by the police.
Yep.
As you all want to do if
Unsurprisingly.
you're having sex in a public phone booth. And Toyoma comes out as boss. And he's taking Shizuko. And he's all like, Makoto's like, no, she's with me now.
Yeah, she wants to be with me.
She's like, nope, I'm going back to my husband now.
Yeah, she basically says that Makoto turned her into a slut.
Yeah.
Which is what her husband wanted.
Your training worked.
And so now she's going to be happy with the situation.
Mm-hmm. And she says she's the devil now.
Mm-hmm. And she has a very powerful aura in this moment that she didn't really have earlier on.
Mm-hmm. But she says you can come with us if you want.
Yep. Which the mother's like devastated. She's like, no!
Yeah. So he gets in the car with him, and the mother's like chasing him down the street and everything.
Which that's comical too.
It is.
Her running after them.
It really is. So they're back at their estate, and we see Haru walk in on them as they're having a threesome.
Yeah, Shizuko's bound up again, and it's just a full-on threesome.
Yeah. Very awkward. Very awkward.
Very awkward. It goes on for a really long time, and it cuts back to Haru a few times to just see how,
and she's devastated.
Upset she is.
Yeah.
And what was the line? I think it's Senzo that says, or is it...
Shizuko.
It's Shizuko herself. She says, yeah, Haru, look, this is the god you worshipped or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she... Talking about men, Shizuko asks if she wants one, and Haru says yes. And that's when it ends.
Yes.
The end.
Interesting ending.
Happy ending for everyone except maybe the mother.
Which, does she deserve a happy ending?
No. She's
traumatizing your kid.
Yeah, it's not cool.
So a little extra notes I want to lay down before we hash out some thoughts.
Okay.
So this film is considered super important from a historical standpoint, mostly for its artistic merits and the things it did. It was the first, S&M Roman porno that they tried. It started a whole series.
Yep.
Generally, though, Wife to be Sacrificed is more highly regarded by critics.
It's supposed to be more artistic, isn't it?
Yes. Again, like I said, Dan was not happy with the film. He did reconcile with them. And I had some commentary from some different film critics. So, just to orient us on, what do people think about this movie.
Okay.
So, Azumi Evers said, Nikkatsu's somewhat innocent approach inadvertently adds a lot of comedy to the film. But summed up the review with, the heroine, who was masochistically trained by men, was actually controlling them the whole time. To me, despite all the humiliation suffered by heroines like Naomi Tani, this is the fundamental truth behind many of the 70s era Japanese sex films.
Okay, that's an interpretation.
Which I do like that interpretation, because if you take that end and that she flips everything and has all the control, you can kind of seed it backwards through the film and see where that was being laid down from the start. Like when she runs off, maybe she was fucking with him.
Right.
Just to watch him freak out first before she came back.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Weissers, we talked about them in the last episode. Here's what they said. They called it well-made garbage, but also added that it was one of the best of Nikkatsu's films in this style.
Okay.
I forgot to bring Behind the Pink Curtain with me today, but I do remember the little passage about it. I believe what Sharp wrote was that the... Old Jasper, yeah. That the reputation of the film exceeds the quality of the movie.
That's a good way of putting it.
Which I think is a very fair assessment of this film.
It is.
Which, by the way, Behind the Pink Curtain, I wanted to highlight this real quick. Last episode, I was like, oh, it's the Bible of being into pink films. You absolutely need it. I don't retract that statement. However, since recording that last episode, I've learned that it is out of print, super out of print, and you can't find used copies either, really. There was one used copy on Amazon as a collectible for $480.
Well, if you're a true believer, you will spend the money to get it.
So I'm saying, be on the lookout for that book. Hopefully they'll reprint it or reissue it.
Or if you see it cheap in a used bookstore, pick it the fuck up.
If you're in a half-price books and you stumble on it, immediately buy it. Hopefully they don't know how much it's worth.
All right.
Which is sometimes a thing at half-price books. But so little follow-up continuations. So Nikkatsu made several sequels. Flower and Snake Sketch of Hell in 85. Flower and Snake 3 Punishment in 86. Flower and Snake White Uniform Rope Slave, also in 86.
I love these titles.
And capping it off in 87 with Flower and Snake Ultimate Rope Discipline.
Oh.
Which is an amazing title.
Wasn't there a remake?
There is a remake. Yeah. That was my next stopping point. There was a series of remakes made starting in 2004, and these were actually released by Toei.
Okay.
So it's actually nothing to do with Nikkatsu. It's kind of the other big studio. But yeah, 2004, they made a Flower and Snake. And then that got several sequels, a Flower and Snake Part 2 in 2005, a Part 3 in 2010, and then a not connected, but titled Flower and Snake Zero in 2014. The 2004 film is really only related by the use of names and themes. It doesn't really share any of the plot details too much. It just kind of is trying to do that spirit of these S&M Roman pornos.
Got it.
I looked up the plot of the 2004 one. I have the disc. I've just never watched it. It was much more of like it's Shizuko and her husband, and she's into her husband. She likes her husband, and he has debt to the Yakuza, and he ends up like giving his wife over to them to settle the debt, and then they do a bunch of the kinbaku torture to her.
Okay.
And then I think it's like a bad ending where at the end she's all into it, and their relationship is ruined.
Okay.
That's maybe selling it short, but
Yeah,
that was the synopsis. But that 2004 remake is also considered sort of a watershed moment regarding Japanese film censorship. Apparently, it super pushed the envelope, and it had people say it has some of the most extravagant scenes of sexual cruelty and graphic nudity that's ever been passed off in a mainstream film.
Maybe at the time?
For the time, probably.
Yeah. I mean, it's still fairly shocking if you're not, jaded like we are.
yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, that's all the little ancillary notes I have.
Okay, all right.
Oh, there's one more thing I did want to highlight. In the cast and crew, they actually had a bondage supervisor as one of their crew members.
Wow, that's a credit.
It was Hiroshi Arato. Well, shout out to that guy.
Yeah, all right, you did a good job. Those are some good knots, sir. All right, what did you think about Flower and Snake?
My feelings are a little weird, a little hard to quantify.
Oddly aroused?
I don't know that it really aroused me that much. I do think, so I'll give it this credit. So the whole like kinbaku thing, I do think there is like a visual beauty to that and the way it looks.
There's an aesthetic.
There's definitely an aesthetic to that. I think it's cooler in some other things I've seen. These are actually mainstream films, but it's Teruo Ishii has done several films kind of in this vein. What is it? It's like Inferno of Torture and Shogun's Torture of Joy.
Those are older films.
Those are a little older and predate this. But those kind of have the thing where it's like the woman and she's like suspended with ropes in like a weird shape. I think that has sort of like this visual aesthetic to it that's really cool and really visually striking.
Also set during like the Edo period you're talking about too. So the dawn of the whole infatuation with this sort of thing.
I think that kind of stuff's cool. How it was here, like it was visually interesting, but it wasn't that like ultra just like impressive mix of eroticism and art and
the whole S&M thing, I mean, it's not my bag. I can see how some people were into it, and that's cool. Not shaming at all, but yeah, it's not my bag.
Yeah.
So as an erotic film, it certainly doesn't work for me personally. Go ahead, please.
And I felt like right, this is kind of a mythic film. If you're into all this stuff, you've always heard people talk about Flower and Snake.
Right.
So in a way, I kind of thought it was going to be like more extreme than it actually is. It's actually, again, like you said, it's more tame in some ways.
That might be the next movie.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure once you start churning out sequels, you got to up the ante.
Right.
But yeah, I thought the central story was good, the way it was told and composed. The whole like backstory of Makoto and this like mental block that he has, that was an interesting premise.
Yeah.
I agree with you that it was kind of a little undercooked.
Yeah, very
They
much.
definitely could have done a little more there with that. That's the difference between this being a thriller or not, I think, for sure.
Yeah.
I can see why Naomi Tani is this queen of Nikkatsu Roman pornos.
She's very good. We didn't really talk about how good the actors are.
The performance is just great across the board. But yeah, she is not only gorgeous, but incredible actress. And yeah, she went through all these scenes just
She
perfectly.
really sells that mixture of like pain and pleasure.
And that's like, I think the film wouldn't really work right
No,
if you didn't have that.
She's the linchpin of the whole thing.
Again, I was kind of weird on the comedy stuff. I was like, is this intentional? Is it not? Now that we've talked through it, I do think it is intentional.
I think it's intentional.
And maybe that's even supposed to be kind of a lever to the...
Especially the sound effects. That's not an accident.
That's like your release lever to the degrading elements, so it's not so overwhelming and stuff. It's not a... it's like the difference between like a Serbian film and something else, right?
Right, yeah.
Which even that had some comedy, but then
Sure.
you can only blunt it down so much.
Yeah.
So overall, I think I liked it. And I actually gave it a 4-star.
Really?
And I think,
okay.
I don't know that I enjoyed it 4 stars worth, but I feel like it's so iconic and so impressive that I just felt like it needed to be at 4 stars for me.
Okay. All right. What was Zoom Up at for you? I can't remember.
I think I also gave it 4 stars.
Yeah, these are not on the same level, dude.
No. No. You know what? I'm going down to 3.
Okay. I think that's... Yeah, I think you were being a bit too generous there.
I'm letting the legacy of the movie overweigh my personal feelings.
That's right.
But we're all about personal feelings. So, Flower and Snake, I liked it. I think it's got a lot of good elements. I think if you're holding this up against Zoom Up, Rape Site, that one's definitely better.
Yes.
This is as a film, as a movie you can watch.
Yes.
This one, though, if you're into the S&M thing, then hey, this movie's got you.
Right, it's probably all about.
It's got you that in spades.
Yeah.
As just a explorer of weird cinema and this kind of stuff, I think it's worth a watch just because it's so.
Oh yeah, it's all
iconic
worth a watch.
and so legendary.
Right. I agree.
But where are you at on this?
I'm pretty much where you are, honestly. I'm wavering between a 2.5 and a 3.
So you're like the same wavering, just a step lower.
Yeah, yeah. I'm probably gonna go. I may as well go with a 3.
Okay.
Because I really do like the humor of it.
Yeah.
And talking about it makes me realize, like, yes, this is intentional. You know. And if it's not, it's still hilarious. It's just so over the top. It's hard for it not to be a little bit funny.
Which, you know what's funny, too, because I've got, like, weird bootleg copies of some of the remakes, and I think it's Flower and Snake 0. The premise of it is, like, super serious, and it's, like, women being abducted for, like, a thing where they get, like, tortured and then killed kind of thing, like, almost like a Saw mashed-in element.
Wow, yeah.
So it's funny to, like, those were my perceptions of, like, what these movies are, and then to go to the original and it's this, I was like, oh,
right.
interesting.
It's almost chaste in comparison, right? I mean, it's a fun little movie. It's harmless, I think. I could see it being pretty shocking at the time, though.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I didn't hate watching it. It's not a long movie. It's only 74 minutes. And there are some really funny parts. Tani is attractive, and she's really good in the role. So, yeah, I mean, it's a pleasant enough watch. I would give it 3 stars. I don't think it's something, unless you're really interested in old pink films, you really don't need to watch this. You know, you know who you are, and if this sort of thing appeals to you, then seek it out. But
oh yeah,
this is never something I would recommend to just a casual fan of cult movies. You know,
yeah.
Whereas Zoom Up, I would,
yeah,
because that works more as a movie.
Yeah, and like I said in that episode, that's kind of a bridge. If you're already into those sort of horror films,
yeah,
it sort of like treads the gap for you.
Right.
This, like you said, it's pretty much purely an erotic film from the start.
There's not much plot. There's not much there really. Whereas Zoom Up has so many layers you can enjoy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm at 3.
Killer. Well, we're like right in lockstep on these. However, we have one more to go.
I sure do.
And it's your pick, my friend.
Okay, this is one, even not being that familiar with pink films, I've seen the title before and read it in some books. But we're going to go back to 79.
Oh, okay.
Same year as Zoom Up. And watch Star of David, Beautiful Girl Hunter.
Ah, excellent. I have the disc, so
excellent.
I'm locked in and good to go.
Wonderful. I hope it is enjoyable. I hear it's a bit more extreme. So
I've never watched it, so it's a good chance to check it off.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a blind watch for me too, so it's a gamble.
Awesome.
I'm rolling the dice.
Well, we'll end with something a little more extreme.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whoa.
So yeah, that's fucking episode 69. Nice. We're so childish.
Perfect.
So if you made it here to the end, thanks for listening. Thanks for coming on this journey.
And what's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you? I'm sorry. Tune in next time to check out Star of David with us.
Yeah.
Let us know what you've been watching. What have you been watching in the normal world of actual movies that aren't esoteric 70s sex films from Japan? We're always looking for recommendations, of course. If you have a movie you think is interesting or compelling or cool,
lay it on us.
Or you listen to a prior block and you're like, oh, I wish they would have talked about this movie, though. Lay it on us. We'll add it to our list. Every time we end a block, we hit up a listener episode to see what you guys have been watching.
We love to watch something new.
And we love those because generally, pound for pound, you guys have better taste than we do, I think.
Yeah,
so
we've gotten great suggestions.
I've loved all our listener episodes. And we just like to hear what you're watching and what you're up to in the world of movie enjoying.
Yeah.
So you can hit us up on Facebook, hit us up on X,
God.
hit us up on Instagram. You can always email us at genreexposure@gmail.com. But otherwise, you have been listening to Genre Exposure.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
You're listening to the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, home to hundreds of hours of free podcast entertainment. The shows on this network all have a common goal, providing you with the best discussions about movies and other forms of entertainment media. The PFPN hopes to fill your earholes with audio joy. Visit our website with links to all the other amazing shows at www.thepfpn.com. Thanks for listening.